Okay, part 3, the big one, command and supply. Now, command and supply, the two systems are actually interlinked, and the command system relies on the supply system. So we'll start with the supply system. But before we do that, there are two concepts that we need to understand first. First is the local test. A local test is based on either the local supply value of the hex in case of supply issues, or based on the morale of the unit in question in case of disruption. The second concept is the range test. Now, the range test is based on, aptly enough, the range from specific units to its parent HQ. Now, it's important to underline that it's the parent HQ. So, if we take this guy right here, 1st Battalion of the 550th Regiment of the 135th 125th Rifle Division, we can see here. So there are the Russians do not have HQs for their regiments. So its parent HQ, the first HQ it encounters climbing up the chain of command, will be the 126th Rifle Division. So all range tests will be done to this HQ. It is under the 5th Shock Army, but it is not the parent HQ. Okay, so the divisional headquarters is right here, and if we zoom in a bit and hit the modified command range, you can see it has a command range of 4 hexes, except it doesn't. This is where it gets a little weird. So the command range, the modified command range, is only the command range in one instance, which we'll get to in a bit. Otherwise, the command range is actually the 50% limit, meaning at the edges of this 4 hex circle, the chances of passing a range test is 50%. Were you to go out to 8, it would be 33%. Or in other words, here it's 1 in 2. At double that, it's 1 in 3. At triple that, it's 1 in 4, etc., etc., etc. So you can actually pass a range test without being in range of the HQ. The odds are low, but it can be done. But again, for simplicity's sake, keep everybody inside the command range, and you'll have absolutely no problems. And it should also be mentioned that the closer you are to the HQ, as I said, at the edge it's 50%. So this would be 75%, and I don't know, maybe 85% or something like that. So the closer you are to your parent HQ, the better chance that you have for passing the range test. Right. With those two concepts out of the way, let's start with supply. If you are playing the vanilla game, the only thing you have to watch for is over here in the top left, the global supply sources. Everything will be based on that value. If you are playing with the virtual supply truck system, which you should, it gets slightly more complicated. Not much, but a little bit. Instead of using the global supply value, you use local supply sources. The global supply value will still apply to naval units if there are any, but that's the only case in which the global supply value will ever apply. Instead, you have supply sources with a certain value, in this case 75, and there are 4 of them as far as I remember, down the edge of the map for the Russians. So these supply sources all deliver supplies down the line, which gives us a local supply value of every hex we can see. So a little bit down the road, it has dropped to 74, then 73, further down 71, etc., etc., etc. So the further away you are from your supply source, the lower the supply value gets. And this value is based on movement points, not distance. So it'll drop slower along roads, and it'll drop faster along rough terrain. And we can actually see this right here. These 3 hexes has values of 71 simply because they're directly connected to the road. This one is down to 69. It has dropped 2% despite only being 1 hex away. And if we zoom in, we can see why. A, there are no roads, and B, the virtual trucks have to cross a stream where there is no bridge. So all local supply values will be calculated based on MP, not on range. Okay, so now we know what a local supply value is. How does it actually affect the units? Well, that depends on which units we're talking about. Let's start with the easy ones, artillery. Artillery, every turn they fire, they have a chance of becoming unavailable for the next turn, which is based directly on the local supply value. There are no range tests, there is nothing else. This is just pass or fail, straight up, straight down. Should they become unavailable, they will then repeat the same supply test, same local test, until such time as they become available again. And then they'll stay available until they're fired. Combat units can go into low ammo states. Every turn they fire, doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, or 3 times, or every turn they fire, there is again a local test made against their supply value. Now, should they fail this one, they will have an additional range test to their parent HQ, assuming the HQ is in command, and only then. If the HQ is out of command, they only get the local test based on the local supply values. Now, should they fail both of these, it will then go into low ammo state, which will have their combat power until such a time as they pass a range test. You cannot get out of low on ammo state based solely on local supply, only through resupply by HQ. The final thing is motorized units. All non-HQ units that isn't foot, ski, rail, or cavalry, they do basically the same as the low ammo test, except they don't do it every turn. Every motorized units will be assumed to have enough fuel for 1 day. So every day on the midnight turn, there is a supply test done exactly the same as the ammo. If the unit has moved within the previous day, doesn't matter if it has moved 1 hex or 100 hexes. The test is exactly the same. Again, first there is a local test against the local supply limit, and if that fails, there's a slightly different range test. In order to pass this range test, the HQ has to be in command as usual, but there is no percentage chance. It just has to be within range, the nominal range of the parent HQ. This is the only time, the only instance where the range is actually the range is for low fuel for motorized and mechanized. So that's the basis of the supply systems. The command system is, as I said, linked to the supply system. Now, what happens during every turn, before the start of every turn, is there is a so-called command test run. And what happens is it takes the top HQ, in this case, the South Front HQ, which is this guy right here, and it does a supply test. Simple, just like the artillery, it's a simple pass-fail. 73%. If he passes, he's in command. If he doesn't, he's not. Next, all the army HQs do exactly the same thing. The only exception is if they fail their local supply test, they then have the option to do a range test to their parent HQ, assuming again that their parent HQ is in command. So let's say, for example, that the South Front passes its command check. then the Second Guards Army fails their local test based on their supply, and assuming that it can then pass a range test to the South Front HQ, it will stay in command. Otherwise, it doesn't. After all the armies have been done, then we get to the corps. After that, the divisions, and if applicable, it goes down to the regiments. So it filters down the range of HQs. So why is it important to be in command? Well, first of all, as I mentioned with this ammo and fuel supply, combat units only get the second chance, only get the range test if the HQ is in command. Furthermore, any unit that is disrupted, hang on, like these guys here, will also have to do a range test. First, when it comes to destruction recovery, the process is actually reversed. First, it tests against the HQ, a range test. In this case, these guys belong to the 32nd Gas Tank Brigade, which are these guys here. And they are well within range. Yes, we're talking, I don't know, 80% or whatever. Now, if they pass this test, the range test, they do not automatically get undisrupted. But it does give them a chance to do a disruption recovery test based on their morale. So D is 4 plus. So that's about 50, there's a 50% chance of them passing. But they can only get this chance if they pass the range test first. The only exception is if the HQ is out of command, or the HQ has been eliminated for some reason, or hasn't come on board yet. They still get the local test for disruption recovery, but only at half the normal chances, half the normal probability. Or in other words, in this case, it would go from 1 in 2 to 1 in 4. So the importance of headquarters are fairly self-obvious. I mean, you need them to be in command to get rid of supply problems. You need them to be in command to get units undisrupted. And in order for the HQs to stay in command, you have a higher chance of them staying in command if their parent HQs are in command, and they have similarly a better chance of staying in command if their parent HQs is in command. So there is a fairly large incentive to keeping all your HQs within range of each other down the chain of command, and keeping all your combat units within range of their parent HQ. And that got overly complicated, I think. But short version is, with command and supply, keep your HQs within range of their parent HQ, keep your combat units within range of their parent HQ, and keep your local supply values as high as you can. Do not go wandering into mountains without a road to bring sub supplies. It's a very bad idea. And with that, I think I have blathered enough. Hopefully this helped a little bit. If not, stick a note into the comment and I'll see what I can do to explain it further.